For those of you that know us here at the Wreck Bike Rebuild Garage, you may notice we are missing someone quite important to the show. Unfortunately, Chase's family has had a death, and he won't be with us for about a week while they're taking care of everything. So our condolences to Chase and his wife and their family. You know, everything will get better eventually, so. Hello everyone, and welcome to Wreck Bike Rebuild Garage, where we take crash bikes, turn them into dream bikes, and give them away thanks to our lovely people over on Patreon. First link down below, go check us out. We make some pretty cool stuff. Today we are working on our streetfighter CBR1000RR. I know it doesn't look like there is a lot here right now, but what we're trying to accomplish today is we're going to try and get our design thought process down onto the motorcycle a bit so we have a better visualization. So when we go to our fiberglass guy, we kind of have a much better idea as to what we really need from him and then where we're going to go with the rest of the design for the rest of the bike. We have some parts to take off that will allow us to temporarily install some parts that'll give us a better look. So we're going to go ahead and get started with putting some of the bodywork hung in its loose place and take a good look at this thing. Let's go! Let's go! Last episode, if you guys didn't see, we had some fun trying to fit our front upper onto our bike. Now, it wasn't designed to fit onto a CBR1000, so the bracketry that came with it had to be modified, and if you guys want to come on over here, I'll show you. We had our good friend Judd, the machinist, come over and take a few measurements and brought it back to his shop and actually welded a small tab onto the bracketry that came with our front fairing, and then added some spacers in here. We drove some hardware on, and now we have a nice solid bracket to hold our front upper. Unfortunately, we're still missing a couple of parts that is going to make it possible for us to finish mount our front fairing. One of those parts is our headlight. Without having the headlight here to line up into the fairing, we really won't know where the final resting place is going to be, but we do still need to look over the rest of the machine and see where we can start making some other progress. So we're going to set this aside for now. We're going to start mounting some of this carbon fiber cover work that we have loosely, just so we could see where we are. Start hopefully getting this design ball rolling a little bit better here. It's still kind of muddy as to what we're going to look like, but I think I'm starting to get there upstairs. So let's put some of this stuff on and see where we're at. We have some carbon covers that are going to cover the side of our swing arm, the side of our frame. Some of the parts that are on this machine right now are in the way for us getting them in place correctly or all the way so we can see where they're supposed to lay. So I'm going to start taking some of this stuff off, get it out of my way so we can put these parts on and get a good look to see where they sit, where they stop, where they start, how they fit. So I'm going to start with the brake system. I'm going to remove the whole system in one piece. And then I'll go ahead and remove the hugger and start putting some parts back on. So let's start with the caliper. brake line off. system is empty. We have our brake light switch wire unrouted here, and now the whole assembly will come off. I'm just gonna lay this here for now. So while we were removing the hose stays for the rear brake line, we removed one of the bolts out of the rear tire hugger here. So I'm just gonna pull the other one out real quick, and the hugger will be off completely at that point. Why is this bolt so long? Here we go. Good. That thing took forever to come out of there. I'm also gonna remove the rider's peg here because we have our cover for this side, and it needs to squeeze back behind all this, so let's get it out of the way so we can access everything. This is our piece for this side of the swing arm. It looks like I am also going to have to remove this bolt and our spool. So this carbon piece actually tucks in behind all kinds of stuff. There is the swing arm cover for the chain, so the chain doesn't drag on the swing arm. That needs to be loosened, so this can kind of tuck in behind it just a little bit. Holy cow, this thing is so perfectly molded to the swing arm, it's unbelievable. Look at that thing. It literally looks like the swing arm is made out of carbon. That is a super good fit. Now I'm not going to tighten any of this stuff, I'm just going to snug it down so it holds everything in place. Man, that looks good. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and mount the rear hugger on. It's pretty much just a total duplicate of this part right here, just made out of carbon fiber, a little bit longer, so you get a little bit more bling, a little bit more flash out of it. So now these bolts that came from the factory have a little bit of a shoulder on them, if you can get that. Good. So this shoulder does not fit in this hole. So we are going to have to open the carbon up. See, the shoulder doesn't actually go in there. We are going to have to open the carbon a little bit to get that shoulder to fit. But I'm going to rest this in. I'm going to tighten the bolt head down. I'm going to see where the shoulder touches the carbon. Hopefully it'll leave like a little tiny white scratch mark in the carbon so I know where I need to drill at. So that's the plan. Doesn't always work that way, but we're going to give it a shot. Fiberglass has its own smell. Carbon's got its own smell. Well, I didn't get lucky enough for it to actually make a mark, so I think all I'm going to do here is we're going to find a nice, very small step drill bit. This is my shouldered bolt, and you can kind of see how close I am. It's really pretty close. So maybe 1 or 2 sizes up on the step. So we got our cover on the other side, fits really, really nice, way nicer than I actually expected it to. We have our hugger on. We're gonna move on to the swing arm cover for this side, but I just wanna wipe it off real quick because it's pretty gross. So our swing arm cover looks amazing. Our rear fender or rear wheel hugger looks amazing. We're gonna move on now to the left and right frame covers. and we'll see exactly how much of the frame they cover up on us. So this is our cover for this side. And now this is something that we were just looking at the other day. Our carbon cover only covers the top section of the frame. Now, the reason why it does that is because these are our side fairings, and our side fairings mount somewhere here and here. And as you can see, the fairings cover the part of the frame that the covers do not. So we kind of thought that maybe we would be able to use some of this fairing mounted back up on here in just a small piece of it, just to cover that section of frame and finish it off. So this one has a big crack in it, but we're really just using this as kind of a dry fit type of situation. So we're going to put the other cover on the other side. This one doesn't actually fit quite as good as the other ones did, but this one's definitely not going to stay on its own. Okay, now it should just hang in there for now. So these parts are only held on by double-sided tape. So once we're ready to do this, we'll kind of try and warm these up, maybe set them outside in the sun for a little bit, make them a little bit more pliable, and then bring them in and peel off the double-sided tape, and stick them on real quick, compress them on there until the tape has a chance to cure, and something like that will stay on there, and it should look pretty good. But we have the same situation where it only covers a portion of our frame. Okay, so again, what we're going to try and do, I'll grab the other piece of fairing. So we're in the same situation here where this piece kind of goes on right here. So maybe if we just do, they're different on both sides though. Yeah. This side, the piece of frame is still exposed, and on the other side, it is not. So no matter what we do with these fairings, there's going to be a piece of frame that is not carbon cover peekabooing through it. Yeah, so there's a real big piece of frame that sticks out because the bike is different from the left and the right. All right, well, it looks like those frame or those fairings are not going to cover our frame for us like we thought they might. We're going to have to come up with a new plan. We'll poll Patreon, and we'll, after this, you know, we're not done yet, but after this we will start looking at color schemes and whatnot. So there'll be some polling going on in the Patreon family soon. So let's see, let's do our front fender and see where we're at with the front fender. It's our last piece of carbon that needs to go on. After that, we'll go ahead and lay the front upper on and see how that looks. And then we're gonna rest our fuel tank cover in here and try and give ourselves the overall flow of the bike. We are still missing a seat. We are still missing a tail light for our tail section that we are going to have fabbed. But we need to have these parts, like I said in the beginning, we're also missing the headlight. We need to have these parts here with us in hand. So whatever bracketry needs to be made or modified to hold everything, we need to know what the part is that we're going to be holding. I'm starting to see this thing come together a bit. I don't know about you. And we're going to continue on. Okay, once again, thank you, Honda. our wonderful friends at Honda here have riveted these little cleats that get mounted to the fender to the inside. So now I get to drill those off. Doesn't that make me happy? So now we have all of our carbon accessories that we had that were given to us in the shop. So take a good look at the carbon before we go ahead and try and fit the front fairing and the fuel tank cover. So take a peek. All right, so here we are back on the machine. Carbon fiber bits are on. So now we're going to move on to our front fairing bracket. Now we did some modifications to it previously. We had a small bracket welded onto the back of these to help us fit and reach the factory mounting positions for our front upper on our bike. Like I said earlier, I don't want to keep harping on it, but this setup wasn't designed for this bike. So we may not be able to use any of this bracketry. We may be able to use some of it. It's really hard to know right now. We do have is our headlight mounting bracket, and just to give you an idea of how this whole thing is supposed to go, like this. All right, and then this is going to hold our headlight where we need it to be permanently. Take all this stuff out, try not to scratch the fender. So our headlight is going to sit, you know, somewhere in this position. And the way our bracketry is set up right now, we really can't get it where it needs to be to line up with everything here. And I'm going to show you in just a second. Now we have a couple issues going on with our headlight. We have a couple issues going on with our front fairing. And number one is our headlight hole is only 5 inches, and the only headlights that I've seen available on the market, the smallest ones I could find that are still going to have high beam, low beam, are a 5 3/4 inch headlight. So some sort of modification is going to need to be done for this hole for our headlight once we get it. And then our fairing is going to sit somewhere around here. And then somewhere around here is going to give us clearance to the radiator. It's also going to get our headlight up where we need it to be. And if you want to come around to the other side, you can see that where our mounting bracketry actually is where the headlight needs to be. So there are going to be some major modifications to all this stuff that's going to hold our fairing in place. But this will give you sort of an idea of where it's going to hang out. So if you can see, the way our clip-on handlebars on, it is not going to allow for us to turn the bars and forks and everything inside of the fairing without rubbing all kinds of stuff. So we have interference issues with our brake line and throttle cables. We also have some clearance issues with the fork legs and the inside of the fairing. So that's something that needs to be addressed as well. Part of what we're going to have to do to address some of our clearance issues is we are going to remove the aftermarket clip-on handlebars that are already on this bike, and we're going to swap all the stuff out on top for a set of handlebar risers and handlebars, and that's going to bring everything we have up to about this point. So once everything is up here, we should have plenty of room to clear all the bodywork that we need. So if you could picture 2 risers here, the bottom of the handlebar here, a sweep up to a bar right about this height. So as we turn the bars, everything should clear over and around the front fairing pretty well. So we are still waiting on our handlebar setup to show up in the mail. We're waiting on the headlight to show up in the mail, as well as the tail light, which we're going to get to in a moment. But you could also see that where our fairing needs to sit, it's going to come right up against these carbon pieces here. So we need to figure out a way to get them to clear and not rub, so we don't rub through either the paint or the sheen on the carbon. So there is quite a bit of modification that's going to need to be done, some trimming, some extra mounting tabs. Thankfully, we have a great machinist that we work with that will be able to handle our bracket with very little effort. I don't want to say very little effort, but with very little thought. He's usually 1 or 2 steps ahead of us when it comes to all this stuff, at least 1 or 2 steps ahead of us. So with our fairing sitting right about here, which is where I think it's really about to live. So now we need to continue on with how the bike is going to flow. And we are going to reuse the factory fuel tank cover, because for those of you out there that have never seen a Honda CBR without the tank cover on it, it's a big blown molded plastic air box and a stamped black steel tank, and everything underneath it is really ugly. So Honda's fix for that is they make this nifty little cover that goes over everything and finishes everything off quite nicely. So we're going to use this piece on our build. And it is going to lay and fit very, very nicely. As you can see, we got lucky enough that it kind of follows this line here. Right, so we have this nice swoop to everything already. It's going to come down to the seat, and then we need something to kind of come into the back and finish off this swoop. I kind of like to see a little bit of a bubble in it just to use some of this shape in the tail. Maybe if there's a, a small hump here and then over to the other side and then a small hump on the other side, something to kind of bring it all together. We're really not going to know at all what that's going to look like until we get this whole thing over to, we have a painter that is very, very good with fiberglass, and he is going to custom make us a tail to fit over our subframe. We're probably going to have to chop up the subframe a little bit. We're going to have to trim some of this down to get our tail section made. We have a seat on order, so our fiberglass guy can kind of follow all the lines and mold everything in together so it looks all nice and clean and tight. Man, I wish we had something to stick on the tail. I plinkoed the tail section before. This is pretty much going to be our overall kind of flow and ebb to the bike. Now from here we could obviously see that we still have lots of pieces of frame just hanging out. This is all going to be exposed later when everything is together, so we need to figure out what it is that we want to do to beautify this. So we also have these sections of frame that stick out here. Now this is just subframe. The seat is only going to come down to this ridge right here. So all this is also going to be exposed. So to put a cover on this, then we would almost have to cover this as well. And now you're talking all kinds of goofy pieces on a bike that's supposed to be naked, So we'll have to talk to everybody and see what the consensus is, but I'm kind of leaning more towards powder coating the frame and the swing arm in our color scheme, whether it's going to be black or red or a mixture of both or whatever the case may be, here and here, to tie these pieces of the bike into our whole design without having to add any extras to it. But we'll have to wait and see. Don't know how easy or difficult it's going to be to possibly have a little cover made, and that'll bring some more painted bodywork to the whole build, which may be nice, may not be nice. We'll have to see if we can maybe put this thing up and make a rendering of it, and see if we can get a better idea as to what it would look like if it was either a bright color powder coated or to put some sort of fairing on it that may flow with the rest of it. So we are still waiting on our tail light, which isn't going to really change the shape of our tail at all, but we kind of need to have it to make sure that it's going to fit on the part that's going to be made later. So all of these parts that I've been discussing are on their way already. We have a tail light, a seat, handlebar kit, as well as a front headlight. All these parts are in the mail, on their way. So we should have them shortly, and we'll be able to swap some parts out and take a better look and see if there's any more we can do to modify what we have here. I'm pretty happy with the direction that this is going now, that we can kind of see the flow of the whole machine.
That was a happy accident that those two lines
Kind of go together. Yeah, that's pretty sweet that that kind of flows together.
Even the actual the angle of the curve, like,
kind of matches the whole thing. Yeah.
Flow.
So this thing is actually, I'm starting to see it now. Finally starting to see it as it comes together. We need to do something crazy with the wheels. We got to go wheel crazy with this thing. Okay, well, I think that's about all we have for you guys today. We are shy a couple of parts. We have a really good idea as to where we're going with the overall design of the bike. We have a couple of discussions that need to be had about what we're going to do moving forward with the frame and the subframe. We are still waiting on our handlebar kit, our headlight, tail light, and rider seat so we can finish off the design process. Hopefully that stuff will be here shortly, and we can get the machinist and the fiberglass guy and everybody together at the same time and get this thing put together in its final shape. And once our final shape is done, then we can move on to color schemes. I guess that's a thank you all for joining us here at the WBRG and our latest video on our CBR1000RR streetfighter build. It's coming together, and we're starting to get excited about the directions we're going now. We have engine parts that are off to a machinist getting ported and polished, and be back soon making lots and lots of horsepower to go into our bike that we're actually stripping bodywork off of and making lighter. So it should be a handful to ride, which is exciting in itself. On our next episode, we'll be installing our handlebar kit. We'll have our headlight, tail light, and rider seat in-house, and we'll probably wind up trying to get the machinist over here into the shop to help us modify or make a new bracket to hold our headlight, front upper, and most likely as well our gauge cluster. So, outro crew, just for you guys, do you think we should make a cover to cover the frame? Or do you think we should go ahead and powder coat the frame and meld it into the design of the motorcycle? So let me know what your thoughts are. Don't forget to drop the OC in your comments so we know it's you. And we will see you on the next episode.